Hello fiber friends! Welcome to the Jilly and Eve channel. I'm Evie and today I am going to give you some tips for transitioning from a park and draft type of spinning to a fully suspended drop spindle spinning. I'll show you what all these things look like and I'll give you some tips for being able to do that with your own spinning. It's a lot of fun. And so I'm going to thank my patrons for this video. This was a special requested topic and I hope that you will all get something out of this and maybe find some new techniques to enjoy your spindle spinning. So let's make some yarn. The fiber that I'm spinning today is Cheviot that I dyed myself, and it's my own unique colorway that I invented just playing around with some colors. After watching the most recent episode of Soulful Spinning, I had to run out and buy one of these spindles that Lisa was talking about because hers just looked amazing, and they are. You should go check that out. This spindle is from Vermont Spindles. This is a spalted tamarind. Because of the spalting, it has all of these little dots and lines and interesting sort of visual components to it. And I noticed right away that this one spot on the side of it looks very much like a little flame. And it reminded me of Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle. So I think this spindle's name is Calcifer. From here on out, I'm calling the spindle Calcifer. Let's begin with some park and draft spinning so we get kind of a baseline for where we're starting from. Park and draft spinning is often what people do when they first start spinning with this type of a spindle. And so what happens is we give it a whole bunch of twist and get it going, right? And so now all this twist has built up in this strand of yarn. And so then we park it, usually by putting it between our knees or something, setting it down somehow so that it's parked. And now we have all this twist built up here, so we are going to draft out the fiber to let that twist redistribute itself so that we have a little bit more of an even twist. And then once we've done that, we're going to wind it up and rinse and repeat. If you get it too close to the hook, you don't have a lot of space to distribute that twist. So you're usually going to be doing this with some length here. Let it spin for a little while, park it, and draft it. So this works. It's the way that I first started spinning on a spindle. It's the way a lot of people start spinning on a spindle, and it works. But I do think that spinning with it fully suspended is kind of a lot more fun. There's a lot more dynamic action happening when you spin fully suspended like this. And like I said before, it just looks really cool. It feels like I'm just pulling this yarn just almost out of thin air. It's just so much fun. So how do we transition from having it fully parked to fully suspended? So a lot of people will say, you know, once you start to get the hang of it, you're just naturally going to be spinning and like be used to the drafting and just kind of, oh look at me, I'm drafting now, how cool. And that's certainly a thing. I think a lot of people start to feel the drafting in their fingers and kind of naturally move from one to the other, but still it can be a little intimidating, especially if you know, we have the joke about we drop spindles, that's why they're called drop spindles. We don't really want to drop our spindles though, do we? I mean, especially these beautiful handcrafted ones. We don't want them just banging around on the floor, and if we're outside, possibly concrete, you know, that we don't really want that for our spindle. So here we go. Let's get into these tips for transitioning from park and draft to fully suspended, and in a way that means we aren't dropping our spindles. So So here's the first thing that I usually think about when I am fully suspended spindling. First thing, you don't have to let the twist run out, the energy run out of your spindle. And what do I mean by that? When I get it going and I start drafting, I don't have to draft until I'm gonna turn it over here so it has a place to go. I don't have to draft until the spindle stops. I don't have to wait for that to happen. Now this is a very long spinning spindle and it has just stopped turning just now. And now what happens, it starts to turn the other direction. And now it's unspinning. What's that gonna do? Well, that's gonna take my twist out, and without the twist, my yarn's gonna fall apart. So a lot of times people will drop their drop spindles because it stops spinning the direction they want, it starts going the other direction, and then their yarn falls apart. It's not breaking, it's unspinning and sliding apart. So what do we do to prevent that? Well, what if we get a nice rhythm going? Give it a flick, do some drafting, and I'll say flick, draft, 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 draft. Then flick, draft, 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 draft. Do you see what I'm doing there? It's going to vary. Every spindle form, shape, weight is going to be different. And so you'll adjust for each one. But for this one, I'm finding where a very nice, oh, and I should add, it will also vary depending on the fiber you're using. But for this one, I have a really nice rhythm going where I can find that spot between how much twist and time it takes for me to draft, 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 how much twist I've gained in that time, and then I grab it to stop the twist and I give it another flick. Because after that initial flick, it is slowing down. You're not going to consistently have that same speed at all times. It's gonna start slowing down till it goes backwards. So you don't have to run out your twist. You don't have to use up all of the spin before you either grab it to wind on or grab it to give it another flick and keep that energy going into your spin. So that's my first tip. Don't wait for it to run down. You don't have to wait that long. Just find your rhythm between the flick, the draft, the flick, the draft. Maybe then we're winding on however long you've gotten at that point. So there you go. That's tip number one. Now for tip number two, we are going to get up close and look at how I'm drafting. I wanted to mention, I see a lot of people drop spinning where they have their fibers straight up and all the weight is coming straight down like this. And this can cause the yarn to end up thicker. It has to be thicker to make that work reliably because you require less twist to make a secure, thicker yarn. So when you are drafting like this, you get that feeling in there like, oh, I need this to be secure. I need this to hold. It has the weight of the spindle on it, and I don't want it to slide apart. And so we end up getting thicker to have enough twist for it to hold with integrity, and then we also end up clamping down on the second half or third or what have you of the staple so that it won't fall out. If we were holding here, it would just fall right out, right? So that gives us two things. One, we're fighting against what we're pinching on. We're pinching on both sides. And then also we're relying on that twist to get in there really fast and thick so that it can not drop again. So that's why I like to actually draft from the side. I am going to hold the yarn I'm making with my pinky, and that allows me to draft between my hands here. So it's kind of like all of the weight of the spindle is supported by my pinky, not, this is key, not the yarn that hasn't been made yet. And that allows me to not drop my spindle as often, although I do still drop my spindle. Everybody does. Everybody does. It just happens. But this helps it to not happen as often. It also helps me to be able to control my drafting a little bit more. And this is just for this one particular drafting style. Keep in mind, and I will reinforce this, there's not one right only way to do this. There's not one only right way for all spindles. Different spindles, different fibers, different techniques, they all apply. This is just for what I'm doing right now with this spindle and this fiber. So, all right, so when I give it a flick, I'm kind of holding that up there with my pinky so that I can do the drafting between my fingers and let that kind of slide along so that I'm getting it very consistent and I'm not feeling concerned that I'm going to have a weak spot as I'm drafting this out before the twist comes in there, or it's just gonna fall apart. And I feel that this actually helps my spindle spinning consistency quite a lot to hold it like this. So I've got it on my pinky and I can draft and slide that twist along. So this is a short forward, a kind of a worsted style if we wanted to put a name to it, because I'm just pulling out part of the lock, sliding the twist along, pulling out part of the lock of the fiber, sliding my twist along. Yeah, it's making a really nice yarn from this Cheviot wool. So now here's your third tip. And this one has a little bit more to do with confidence. This is a little bit less in the spindle and the fiber and a little bit more kind of up here. I hear a lot of my students and people that I work with for spinning, they start with the park and draft and then talk about maybe someday I'll be able to do a fully supported spin. I'm like, well, try it. What's holding you back? What are you waiting for? What's the thing that's gonna give you enough courage to go forth and make it happen? What is the thing? What is it? So tell me in the comments if you have been a little intimidated to do a fully suspended spinning like this. If you've been concerned about that or nervous about that, let me know what's holding you back. And here's my challenge to you. What if today, right now, or Tour de Fleece is about to start, maybe for the challenge days, you can really challenge yourself, if you haven't yet, to try it. Try a fully suspended spin and see what happens. If you are really concerned that you have a precious spindle and you don't want it to get banged up and dinged up on the floor, that's valid. Just put a big cushion down. Put a couch cushion and stand over it so that if it does hit the floor, it has a soft landing. And use a fiber that you're not so concerned about getting it messed up. A good fiber to use for this type of spinning might be something like a Cheviot, where it's has a longer staple length. That makes it a little easier, and where it's not quite a slippery fiber like those bamboos and silks and things that can definitely be a little bit more challenging when you're just getting started on this. So yeah, I think get yourself set up with the right tools and materials, but then also get yourself set up with the right kind of mentality, like, okay, we're trying this and it's new. It might get messed up, and that's okay because it's new and we're learning, and eventually it'll be great with a lot of practice, because it's a skill. Just like anything, it takes practice and it takes some time and a little bit of investment on your part to get it there. I hope that these tips have given you some courage to go ahead and try spinning in a fully suspended drop spindle kind of way. Let me know how it goes. I would love to hear about it. And don't forget to share this video with your friends if you know someone who might benefit from these tips as well. Like, subscribe, all those YouTube things. I will see you in the next video. Happy spinning!